On this episode of Evolving Humans, listen to a powerful story of loss and how it became an opportunity for a transformed life. Welcome to Evolving Humans, the podcast for awakening souls. I'm your host, Julia Marie. Settle in and get ready for another spirited conversation. Thomas Wurm is my guest today, and he integrates healing traditions with modern psychology. Thomas draws on his fire service experience and expertise in Neuro-Linguistic Programming, hypnosis, MER, and Hawaiian healing arts to foster resilience and healing. He founded Mountain Mind Tricks, focusing on deep personal transformation and healing from trauma by addressing mental and emotional distress at its root. Thomas' own recovery from personal tragedy through alternative healing methods inspires his practice, teaching, and authorship, offering a path to well-being that starts from within. Welcome to Evolving Humans, Thomas. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation and where we're going to go, and just thank you for everybody listening.
Yeah, you work with some techniques that I'm curious about that I'm not familiar with, so I can't wait to get into this discussion, but I always like to start at the beginning. What was it like growing up in Thomas's house?
Wow. Yeah, for me as a child, I had an amazing imagination. I mean, me and my best friends would play this game called Creatures, where we would be dinosaurs or these superheroes in different realities. And as a child, that seems pretty normal, and we're going to tie this in later, but really what I'm doing now is like these imaginations, our mind is so powerful. And I think it was, um, even as a child, I was opening up to these gifts that I have as far as helping people heal and understanding the mind. And for me, psychologically, there was a lot of strife with my parents' relationship and brother and all sorts of things going on at a developmental age. So, it wasn't easy for me necessarily.
Well, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
As you grew into young adulthood, you became a firefighter, and that's an unusual job. And I'm just curious, how did you go from where you were to wildland firefighting?
Yeah, this is as a teenager, and we're just going to start from the beginning because I think it's a good from around the age like 12 to 15. There was my life was really distraught. I was a very angry teenager. And of course, most people go through this, but mine was pretty extreme. And so I would kind of lose, I would rage, I would do all sorts of things that I needed help. And so, um, and unfortunately, I just got into the wrong crowd. And I had a near death experience at age of 15. And that really turned everything upside down for me in my life in a lot of good ways. And I went from being in the wrong crowd to like failing out of high school to all of a sudden I was getting 4.0s and I was reading 3 or 4 books a week on Buddhism, on Taoism, on meditation, on yoga, like trying to understand what happened to me. Like all of a sudden I was open to this, like, what is consciousness, right? And so it's interesting because at the end of high school, there was like, I really wanted to do this alternative healing work, but I wasn't really sure how to do it. But my father and my grandfather were firefighters, so I don't know, it just made sense to me. Like I should just go do firefighting. I'll make some money. I'll just go straight into life. And it's amazing. I spent so long in that career. As I look back, it's like, wow, I can't believe I did that for 14 years. And the the life as a wildland firefighter is rough. I mean, you become a master at suffering is what I always say. You're just carrying 40 to 60 pounds in the mountains. The stress is really high. You're just pushing your body to the maximum. I mean, typically it's like riding a Tour de France every day is what the job is. I mean, physically, on top of the mental and emotional stress. And so it really, I think I learned how to push myself in ways I just didn't, I still don't even understand, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And also what happened, which is so interesting, is that these gifts came to the surface, of course. And I began to talk to the trees. I began to talk to the birds. I began to talk to the fire and understand nature around me. So it really, being in this, I always say it's like the wrath of God. You're just standing there with these like 300-foot flames, right? It's like, but to actually begin to start interacting with that consciousness was really when something started to change inside of me. Uh, that's when I knew, it's like, maybe I'm not supposed to be a firefighter anymore because this isn't normal.
Well,
Nor, yeah,
you casually mentioned an NDE at 15. I mean, you don't have to share, but I just find it interesting. Well, I was 15 and I had a near-death experience and my whole life changed. And I didn't find that anywhere in any of the materials I read on you. So if
yeah.
you don't mind, can you
Yeah,
share?
of course. Of course. Yeah. And it's so interesting because for a long time I was like, I never really thought about it as an NDE. And what happened to me is it was, alcohol, pills, like all these drugs were in my system. And I was feeling sick, classic, I'm gonna throw up from drinking kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Washington State in the winter. And I went out of this house, big party house, and I just collapsed in like briar bushes in a deep winter rain, uh, and everything just went black. I mean, it was just void. And so for me, I always thought, maybe this was just a blackout or something, but no, no, no. It was so peaceful and silent. There was
Mm-hmm.
nothing, no sound. And later, after I was reading like Dr. Raymond Moody's work about near death experiences, like, oh, like everything changed after that. Like I was a completely different person afterwards. That was what convinced me, like, oh, it was a near death experience. Absolutely. Because, and what's so interesting is now some of the mystical experiences I've had, it's like I've had the opposite, like where there is nothing and now I've experienced the everything. And so I know that place, that void. In fact, I use it in client work sometimes. It's so interesting that was a major catalyst in my life. And it's funny that it never, well, it took many years for me to understand. Like, I fell
Mm-hmm.
off cliffs, I broke my neck surfing, like I got close calls with trees, like I almost died so many times. And you know, it took me a while to be like, oh, something's trying to wake you up. Something's trying to wake you up in this lifetime. So you should probably listen.
Well, you definitely got the knock on the door. You got the call. And here's what I know. If we don't hear it the first time, we don't have to worry. If we don't understand what's happening to us, we'll get repeated chances. The universe is very persistent. And I find it interesting. I had an insight while you were describing your experience that you went to this velvety blackness place. And most people that have near-death experiences describe this light. And I've always thought of the light as the creative force and the void as the field of unmanifest potential, like the divine, the feminine, the field in which you create. So it's almost like you went right to the source of everything before even creation began, would be my perspective on that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, wow, I'm getting truth bumps. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. Uh-huh. Yeah, I can feel the energy in that. And thank you for that perspective. Thank
Yeah,
you for that perspective. Yeah.
that's the feminine aspect. The light is the masculine aspect. That's just my view.
Yeah.
So you kind
Yeah.
of went home to mother.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
everything changed, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Game changer.
Yeah. Well, you are speaking about the stress of wildland firefighting. And that's the other comment that I'd like to make. It almost feels like you said you started communing with the trees and nature and all of that. And it's almost as if the stress of the work itself forced you open a little bit because your intellectual guard is down because you're physically tired.
Yeah, and it's almost what I noticed is that, snowboarding or surfing or, it could be anything for anybody, but it puts you into this flow state.
Mm-hmm.
Because and for me, I was a master at chainsawing, at cutting trees. Like that was my as a firefighter, like they would call me, like, we got this really bad tree, come cut it. It's like, okay. So that became my art, if you will. It was my samurai sword. And so I would get into the tree cutting or even other aspects of firefighting, but it really drops you into this altered state where everything melts away and you're just doing the thing. And that I think that state of consciousness is when things started to really like open. I would notice like, wow, like 2 hours have gone by. Like I can't even believe like you just kind of go bye-bye. Your conscious mind is just gone and you're there doing the thing and you execute perfectly, And so that was I think it's just a very you go into an altered state of consciousness, no doubt, from the stress, from the physical exertion, from lack of sleep, poor food, being high in the mountains. There's all these factors. And by the end of my career, I was listening to the fire. The fire would say, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? Do not drive down that road. We're going to burn up that whole canyon this afternoon. And every time I got a message like that, it was right. Yeah, it saved me many times.
You experienced a loss. You write about a loss that ended up changing your life. Can you tell us that part of your story?
Yeah. So in, let's see, 2015, I believe it was, my captain, my supervisor, one of my really good friends, he passed away suddenly from a heart attack, and really young, which unfortunately is common in our field of work. And this, it dropped me. I remember when I got the news, I literally fell to the ground. I collapsed just from the shock, and so it took about, I didn't really know what was happening to me, but it was there's un unbearable grief hit me really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I started, within a year, I started getting all these physical manifestations and really just high anxiety. And it was a traumatic event for me. And so, that really propelled me into like, I have to do something. Like, I don't know what to do besides meditation. That's the only thing that I've ever done that really helped me. And that's, the meditation, I went really deep, probably a little too fast. And I had a Kundalini experience that really, again, I would say was the opposite of the void we talked about earlier. It was all of a sudden I was propelled into everything and understanding like everything is consciousness. Everything is this field of
Mm-hmm.
oneness, of divine intelligence, of God, right? And that was when I would say that was another like pinnacle point for me where it's like, okay, I can't do firefighting anymore. Like that wasn't the thinking, but it was the seed that was planted. And all I knew after that experience was I have to help people. I had no idea what that meant. This time I had this major mystical experience. My symptoms got worse. I was seeing things. I mean, I was seeing sacred geometry and I mean, the mystical state I went to really knocked my body out of balance. So I began with acupuncture, and my acupuncturist after about 6 months, I was doing much better, but he was like, you better go check out this NLP thing. You should go try it out. And I was immediately hooked. And so that's when I was exposed to my first breakthrough session.
And tell them
Was
NLP is
Yeah,
correct.
neuro-linguistic
Yeah.
programming. Yeah, so it's neuro, like our neurology, but more like our mind, our thoughts, how they affect our body, how they affect our reality, the pictures in our mind. It's really like the foundation of like Jungian psychology,
Mm-hmm.
modern psychology, these kinds of things. And then the linguistics is the communication. So the communication between ourselves and others. But it really comes down to the stories we're telling and how we really create our reality with our language. And then the programming is really the programming is kind of from ages 0 to 7, you're basically in a state of hypnosis.
Yeah.
So anything that's said, your whole environment, school, church, family, all these things are just directly downloaded into you. And you tend to make really strong beliefs at this age that are, things like I'm not good enough. I want to feel safe. These really primal beliefs. So you get this deep programming. So NLP is all about looking at the pictures in your mind, what story you're telling yourself about that picture, and what's the program you're running. So in mental emotional release, this MER comes from NLP, but it goes so deep. And so it's really part of a breakthrough session is it's not a standalone. We can do it standalone, but it's really much more powerful when we put it together in this holistic session where, yes, we do the talking. We'll do 2 to 3 hours of talking. That's a detailed personal history, your story, what's going on in your life, what's happening, what are the symptoms, what's going on in the mind, the emotions, your relationships, your career. What we're doing is we're trying to find the patterns. It's going to feel like therapy, but it's more like, you put your pants on one way, you put your left leg on first, you put your right leg, right. Well, you do your anxiety a certain way. You do your, whatever the physical health thing is, you do that a certain way. Like you brush your teeth a certain way. It's a strategy. So we're also looking for the greater problem. What's the one belief that connects all the dots? It's creating the problems. So that's a big piece of the breakthrough. And then we get into the release work, which is really, NLP, but the mental emotional release. And what we do is we get in touch with the unconscious mind's timeline, right? So what this means is that your unconscious mind has this time-stamped, everything's sorted, and everything's saved like a hard drive. Every moment, every second, every trauma, every belief, every emotion is in that timeline at the unconscious level. So we actually utilize that, and we take the mind in a visualization from now. We float above the timeline and go into the past, the very first time, let's say you felt anger, or you felt sadness, fear, whatever we're working on. And what we do is we actually change the time perspective. So we change the position you are along the timeline, and we get high above the event. And what happens when we change that time perspective, all of a sudden the unconscious mind is like, wait a minute, now I get it. It solves the problem, basically. So there's this learning, and I call it people pop, basically. They're just like, oh my God, wow, now I understand. It's not my anger to carry. And what's so interesting is these root causes, this first event. I mean, it can be generally 2 to 3 years old. That's what we're looking for. Sometimes it's during birth, in the womb, past life. It could be an ancestor. It could be genealogical. So a lot of times these things, we're just going to trust the unconscious mind wherever it shows up. It doesn't matter about our beliefs. It's just, what did the unconscious mind make? Let's work with that. And it's so profound. When we release these root cause beliefs, like, a typical greater problem, it's going to be, I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable, not safe. Like, they're always different, but it's some iteration of that. We all have something similar like that at the root. When we work on these things with these techniques, everything changes for that person. Everything. Their health improves, the stress inside, and that's the biggest thing. It relieves the internal stress, the internal blocks that we're creating. And, we know from a physiological level, stress is kind of a killer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you answered my next question. How can changing our past perspectives change our future?
Yeah.
The program is carried in the subconscious mind. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. Now we can think of the subconscious mind as the body, actually. It's not that different.
That's
the unconscious
true.
mind,
Yeah.
Does our breathing, does our circulatory, does all these things. It's very kind of body keeps the score. And what's so interesting, you said, like, but how does it affect the future? Well, we're affecting now. We're going to feel so much better now, which is going to affect our future. And what's so interesting in these sessions is, we don't end at release work. We actually start visioning. We actually start projecting out. What do you want in your life? What are your goals? So then we start kind of a coaching program, but we actually create goals, a vision, something this person wants to go into, and then we actually put that in the future timeline. Oh my goodness, this is a game changer, because all of a sudden the unconscious mind just starts running that program. Like, I already achieved that goal. I'm just going to act that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, as far as achieving goals, getting what you want in life, manifestation, if we want to call it that, it really is. You unblock the unconscious mind. We put some goals in the future, take some action. It's powerful, life changing.
So the unconscious mind doesn't function in the dimension of time. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that it sorts things by time, but it's also because the mind is detached from physical reality, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what time it is. So you can imagine working out, and there's a lot of science behind this. You can imagine working out and your body will actually build muscle because
Mm-hmm.
your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and what's real. So when we go into the past, it's the brain doesn't know if it's the past or the future. It's just now. That's the best way I can explain it. And I think the unconscious mind, we're tapping into this infinite well of consciousness, through the highest self, if you will. It's not that far from the unconscious mind into the highest self realm.
We're reorienting our perspective from our limited physical point of view and moving to a more expanded space, is what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's just changing, our perceptions about things, and we look at like Bruce Lipton's work and biology of belief and
Mm-hmm.
epigenetics. It's our energy and our environment are so important to our cells. And when you hear Bruce talk, he'll say the most important thing about environment, it's your interpretation of the environment. It's your interpretation. So that's what we're doing. We're changing your interpretation of these events. And that changes the chemistry, the biology, it changes your psychology, it changes everything because it's your mind is that strong. Your mind is that powerful. Why can somebody get a fake knee surgery and their knee heals? Well, because they believed it did.
Mm-hmm.
They believed in the surgery. So it's about tapping in, going way beyond placebo and tapping into the power of the mind.
Now, you talk a little bit about meditation, and we're talking about the power of the mind here. So, a lot of people talk about meditation as a tool for spiritual realization, but you're kind of intimating that maybe I could use meditation to establish or maintain a positive mental health pattern or even change my physical health, almost, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely. And meditation, I think, is the key to just about everything in life. And I want to go back to what you're saying is like Deepak Chopra just put out a new book called Quantum Biology. Amazing book. And what he talks about so much is that the stress, basically affects the organs. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is when we go into meditation, and there's two types of meditations, there's active and passive. Passive is
Yes.
like Zen, right? We're going into nothingness, we're quieting the mind. This is a beautiful practice. It really helps us during our daily life to just come back to center, to deal with the daily stress. It's beautiful. Active meditation, we could call it Qigong. We could call it, or Neigong, actually, like more of an internal movement, right? We could call it yoga. Like there's so many practices. We could call it hypnosis because to me, an active meditation, we're using the mind to do something. So yes, we can absolutely use the mind. When we do this in hypnosis is talk to the organs, you know? Talk to the little person inside, the little girl, the little boy, talk to, do some forgiveness work, So the all of the things that we're talking about, the mental emotion release is going to feel like an active meditation. Ho'oponopono or higher self therapy, these
Mm-hmm.
other spiritual techniques that I use, it's going to feel like a meditation. And what's so interesting is I think that active meditations that we're talking about, these techniques, open you up to have a deeper Zen like meditation that opens you up to the possibility of awakening, having an awakening, expanding the consciousness. It's very tied together. This release work and expanding your consciousness and becoming or realizing who you are, your being of light.
As you're talking, I can almost feel how whatever those patterns of belief are, they almost feel like concrete. And it almost feels to me like as you release them, well, now you've just let go of something, and it almost feels like you then expand.
Yeah, yeah. And here's, I want to go with psychology a little bit. There's our unconscious mind takes in 20 million bits of information per second. Okay, so we wouldn't have a coherent reality. There's just so much information. Now, what happens is our unconscious mind, our beliefs, our values, our experiences are filtered basically, and our brain starts to delete, generalize, distort reality basically, so we can have a coherent reality. So we go from 20 million bits of information to 126 bits. This is our reality, our base reality. 20 million to 126. Now, what happens when we release a belief? We're changing that 126. So let's say we're working on relationships. It's possible that after a breakthrough session, and I've seen this so many times, especially in relationships, like all of a sudden that perfect partner shows up. But guess what? They're actually there the whole time. You couldn't see them.
Mm-hmm.
You literally couldn't see them. It's like when you're looking for your keys and you're trying to leave the house,
Yes.
and you're like freaking out, and it's just like, I've looked here so many times, and then there they are on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Like you walked by them 100 times. It's the same thing. Like your brain literally deleted the keys for some reason. So when we change the 126, when we change our beliefs, we're changing the way we see reality, and that is one of the most powerful, beautiful things about the work.
Yeah. Fundamentally, it seems to me it comes down to, I say it all the time, everything is frequency. So depending on where you're vibrating, that's almost what you're going to have in your reality.
Yes. And so, this really gets into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and what he's doing is so beautiful, and seeing how these people in these group workshops can go from having a debilitating disease to all of a sudden they're walking out of their wheelchair in 5 days, and the brain science is there, and the blood work is there, and everything's showing, jaw dropping that it's a different person. All it's quantum biology.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question that your mind can literally rearrange your molecules. We know that now. So it's really that person in my mind, back to the reality thing. They had a debilitating disease. They did some really deep meditation work, had an experience, and now they live in a different reality where they can walk. That's the mind. It's possible.
My mind is boggled right now. It's doing all kinds of, wow, there's a lot of potential here. And especially maybe for people that have experienced recurring, I don't want to use the word stuckness, but it's like I keep going around the same cycle over and over and over again, and I keep trying different things, but I can't get out of this feedback loop that is not serving me. This almost feels like this could be my way out.
Yes. I would say a lot of my clients come to me after 5 or 6 years, 10 years of therapy, and they're like, I don't even know. I'm not getting what I need. Not to knock on therapy, because therapy is amazing for some people. It's beautiful. And one thing I will say that therapy is amazing at is helping you understand what your greater problem is. I would say every time somebody's been in therapy for more than a couple of years, they'll come to me, and it's like they just go straight. I know exactly what my greater problem is. And wow, therapy is really good at that. And so I think the inability to release the energy, it doesn't, my techniques are amazing. There's other techniques that do the same thing. It's really about, can you move the energy of that belief? And so, I think the people that have reoccurring issues, that have reoccurring things, it's a lot of times it comes down to a secondary gain. This is something we really work on in the breakthrough session, is that by believing you're not good enough, you're gaining something, as in you're not putting yourself out there. It feels safe, right? It's protecting you somehow. So a lot of times these secondary gains will really lock us down from really expanding to that next level. And so we have to talk to the little girl or the little boy and tell them, no, we want to feel safe and protection in a different way. We're not saying it's wrong. We're not saying it's bad. We just want to change the way we achieve that protection. And maybe that protection and that safety comes from eating well. Maybe it comes from all these different ways of achieving that. And then the unconscious mind can start to let go and say, okay, I'm ready to take that next step. And it really comes down to trusting the unconscious mind, you
Hmm.
know, and knowing that the conscious mind, our waking personality, is what directs the unconscious. That's the captain. But it really, that's about it. Doesn't really do anything else besides tell it what to do. So we can't trust on our thinking, you know. Once we're in a thinking loop, you're running a program. That's it, right? So once we have to come back and like, what do you actually want? And not spin and spin and spin. What do you actually want and how can we achieve that?
Just for my own awareness, where is my ego? Where is my ego while all of this is happening? Is it
Yeah, so conscious mind, right, is our ego, which is kind
okay?
of our
Yep.
identity, who we think we are, how we
Okay.
focus on things. We also have our persona, right? Our
Hmm.
our masks we wear on with other people is typically the conscious mind. The conscious mind is about 5% of our psyche, actually. 5%. The rest is the unconscious and the collective unconscious or highest self. So, typically, from a psychology perspective, it's like our unconscious mind is, 90 to 95% of our psychology. Like that's a lot. It's like an iceberg. So this tip of waking consciousness is just a little bit,
Hmm. Well, and that's kind of the point I wanted to make. We're letting 5% of us run pretty much the whole show, most of us.
right?
And
Right.
yeah.
And so this is the beautiful thing about meditation is that all of a sudden, because I do feel like sometimes there's a barrier between conscious mind and unconscious in our like when we're driving, when we're like, talking to somebody, we're really active in this like certain brainwave states. But meditation brings us into that delta theta brainwave
Hmm.
state where all of a sudden these barriers between conscious and unconscious start to dissolve and we open up to the unconscious mind and we can start playing, we can start working, we can start doing the things. So I think that's again why these altered states of consciousness, if you will, are so important.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. And is there anything you want to talk about that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah, I would say the one of the big things is that there's uh the Ho'oponopono and higher self therapy aspect to this is really a spiritual process of doing something similar as mental emotion release. So it comes from a lineage in Hawaii, that I'm a
Hmm.
part of. And so we bring in, if the client's open to energy, we might just do higher self therapy instead of the mental emotion release. Because mental emotion release is so beautiful. And sometimes the mind gets confused and it's just like, let's just go straight to the energy. Let's just release the energy, and it's such a powerful, beautiful technique. And so that's where, what I would say is just in this process, a lot of times the thing I would say, obviously, we're way different than traditional therapy already, but the next step is like to take it to the next level is just the energy work that we're doing on top of the mind work is it's so beautiful. It's so much transformative. It's just
Yeah.
total transformation.
Well, and without me asking you the question, because I had a feeling it would probably be answered through our discussion, you kind of explained the interconnectedness and interrelatedness of body, mind, and spirit. Like it's the one affects the other and they're not independent of each other.
Yeah, yeah, and something we call the four bodies, spiritual, mental, emotional,
Physical.
physical,
Yep.
and so that's something from a spiritual perspective. I think so many traditions, even in Buddhism or Christianity or the major religions or even the New Age movements, it's like this denial of the body. It's like I have to meditate and fast and like not go out into society, and there's beauty in that. That's your choice. And but the other perspective is that you're denying yourself to have
Mm-hmm.
this life in so many ways. And so I just want to be clear that there's no denial of the body here. The physical body is important too, like physical nutrition and working out and exercise and going outside. Like these physical aspects are just as important as the spiritual or the mental or the emotional. So it's all equal to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a balanced process that's in harmony. Every leg of the stool is important.
Before you tell the people how they can find you, I've got a few questions I like to ask. 3 words to describe yourself.
Oh, love, light, and happiness.
3 words to describe your spiritual journey.
Suffering, realization, and transmutation.
That gave me goosebumps. That was a good one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
What is your greatest spiritual lesson?
That the spiritual realms, all these things that are way, way out there in spirituality and enlightenment and nirvana, whatever we call it, it's not out there. It's actually right here. In so many traditions, so many New Agers are talking about ascending, when actually the true purpose of this life is descend deeper into the body and be here now.
I'm totally in alignment with what you just said. We're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is your concept of God or spirit or source, whatever you want to call that higher power?
Yeah, I think it's a infinite creative intelligence that is fractal, holographic. In other words, one cell has consciousness, and it's a fraction of all of consciousness. And so there's this fractal holographic nature, and it's everywhere. It's everything. It's quantum, it's spirit, it's energy, it's our thoughts, our feelings, the people. We're literally encased in God and spirit in every way, in every possibility. And we're just here to play, actually.
Mm-hmm. And so, what is your final message for the listeners?
Yeah. Final message is that I've helped many people with trauma that come to me that feel like there's no hope. So I know there's people listening that have that feeling of like there's just no hope or there's despair. And what I can say is that when you become in charge of your mind, you become in charge of your reality. There is hope. There is hope. It comes back to being in charge of your mind. And there's so many different ways to get there. I'm always here for you.
Please tell the people how they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Instagram, Mountain Mind Tricks, mountainmindtricks.com. And then also Thomas and Wurm on Amazon. You'll find a couple books there, 7 Ways to Medicine and Awakened by Heartfire. Those 2 books are a pretty good read. And yeah, that's the best way is Instagram and my website.
Well, I just want to thank you again for sharing your story, and you've given me a banquet table full of food for thought, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for just your presence today and having this conversation with me. It's just been an amazing opening. So just thank you so much.
That's our time for today. To all you evolving humans, thank you for your continued support of this podcast with your downloads and shares. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. To learn more about my classes, events, and services, please go to my website, www.juliamarie.us. The link for my book, Signals from My Soul, is also in the show notes. And now, a quote for you to ponder as you go about your day. Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. Rumi.